Well, good morning, and it's 7:30 at 7:30 on the 4th, Thursday, the 4th of March in the year 2021, the day after the spring budget. And the spring budget will make all the difference to the way that our lives are going to carry on after we get out of lockdown. And there is some controversy over that. And I'm going to bring in our good colleague, Paul Fowle, in a minute or two to give an analysis. His analysis is much better than mine. My reaction to most things government nowadays is it stinks, but it's not all true. And Paul has got a much better balanced view. However, who are we? Why should you be watching us? Why should you be listening to us? Well, we may come out of a tiny town, but we speak to the world. Mirador Television. Here we are. Well, there you are. That's who we are. Now, I want you to know that we use the latest technology on a lot of things, and the weather is no exception. Today, it's sitting at about 6 degrees at the moment. It's only going to rise to about 7. And then throughout the day, it's going to be cloudy with a mild breeze, no rain, but the temperature is going to drop slowly until we get down to 2 again this evening. And that's pretty cool. And we're heading for a cool weekend tomorrow and the following 2 days. So watch it. But how do we assess? We have got a very technical way of doing things. I thought I'd just let you see how we do it. Hi, welcome to Mirador Television. This is local TV, but probably not local TV as you know it. We don't have much cash, so for one thing, we have to do much of our stuff outside. We don't even have a studio. So we don't even have a weather presenter. But we will try to bring you the weather. So when you see me with an umbrella, it's raining. So when I have my walking stick, it's fine. If my hat blows off, it's windy. And if I'm wearing a bikini, it's hot. Not that you're going to see me in a bikini very often. The body's gone, you see. Not a pretty sight.
But when it comes to mixed weather, well, we really have a problem. It's silly of us to serve up the same old rubbish that you can see on regular television, so we're serving up rubbish of our own. But I hope that it's nutty enough to bring you back to watch us again. Stick with us, Nutty TV.
Well, there's a scientific way of doing the weather, and we get it right more often than not. Now, just a quick look at a bit of the news outside the budget. First of all, Meghan has accused the royals of perpetuating falsehoods. That's a nice way of saying she's saying that they're lying. COVID infections are declining, but the decline is slowing in England. So, in other words, we've still got to be pretty alert. SpaceX's Starship rockets lands, but then explodes. Oh dear, we've got a bit of a problem there. And the new COVID vaccines for variants are to be fast tracked. So those are a few of the other stories outside of the budget that are circulating in Britain. But now let's go and get the expert, shall we? Because he's far more knowledgeable than I. Good morning, Paul.
Morning. The expert hasn't arrived, so I've taken his place.
Well,
morning, King. Morning, good.
If we do it the same way we do the weather, we're onto a winner.
It's fine. Yeah.
Now, Paul, we covered the budget yesterday. You and I watched it carefully, and we made analysis on the way. We had a few technical problems, but what the heck? It seems that people were quite happy because we were giving a sort of a local spin. But looking at it this morning is that employers are to be asked to contribute 10% in July and 20% in August and September. Now, I think that's on the furlough payments. What does that mean, and what impact is it going to have on the individual?
Yeah, I hadn't read that part, Keith. Actually, I was just going to. Can I just cover something here? If the budget was a film, all the audience have left feeling fantastically warm, etc., and then they hit the cold rain outside. I think what that 10% furlough is true, Keith. I think I left feeling, wow, that's some budget. And I've said it's a unique one. We know that. He's been supportive, and he's either brave or foolhardy. He's been brave at the moment, but it might come back to bite his bum. Excuse the phrase. Yeah. So the budget itself. I fear for that, Keith. I've seen no bad news. I think he made a key phrase here. If you read the Telegraph, it was he wants to protect the jobs and livelihoods of workers and people. That's a very nice dream, I think, or ambition. But if you look at what he spent and all the sectors he's kind of helped in a major way or a minor way, who's going to pay for it? And I want to see all the figures added up, Keith. I think that's what I said yesterday. There's been no figures overall what it's going to cost. Now, it might well be that every other government's thinking the same way. People have been through lockdown. There's a Brave New World coming up. I think he mentions the term Brave New World. We all want a Brave New World. But if that Brave New World starts with the economy in disarray, it's going to be a long time before we actually see the results. Yes. So he's taken a big step. Can he deliver? You know, it's all very well. It's a wonderful speech, but can they deliver? I'm a cynic in some respects, Keith. It just looks too good to be true. But on the furlough side, yeah, I think. Did you say it's a 10%? Is it 10%, 20%?
Employers to be asked to contribute 10% in July and 20% in August and September. So, in other words, the government is saying, I suppose, like 90% in July, 80% in August, and September.
Yes.
But furlough is only 80% anyway, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. And
so presumably that's
still September, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's being asked to contribute 10% on the 80% or whatever. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, it's I totally agree with what you're saying. One question I have, and I don't know whether you know the answer to this because I've never thought of asking it, and I've never heard anybody else ask it. When they talk about how much they've spent, does this cover the bounce back loans, or because they're guaranteed by the government, or are the
Yeah.
loans as opposed to the money they pumped in separate?
No, well, the term public finances covers everything, Keith. So the budget
Right.
really is, in a simple way, your household, Keith. If you have an audit, everything in your house, there might be loose fittings, there might be fixed fittings. Everything in your house must be accounted for. So it's taking
Right.
in everything. It will segregate loans and grants, etc. But at the end of the day, all the public need to find out is how much will it cost. And is the timeline realistically? I think a year to get the economy back to fair normality, and 2 years, I think, was his other figure. With all the spending, where's the money coming from? It's as though he's opened a magic box for us, and we've all taken it, and then we go away, use it very quickly, and it's well, okay, what do we do now? So it's a brave budget, Keith. I mean, but I think it sounds too good to be true. I think that's what I've other commentators are saying the same thing. It's brave, it's unique, but will it actually cure our long-term problems? It could be a short-term fix it for delayed problems. Yes.
Yeah, I totally appreciate what you're saying. The other thing that is not being anywhere near the economist that you are is if we extend furlough and a lot of people don't go back to work, that means that income tax is not going to be in evidence to go back into the coffers, does it not?
I don't. That's a good point, Keith. I don't think it's that easy. The problem the government have to work out, and the chief auditor is, yes, you're right. If furlough doesn't continue, you have a lot of people in trouble. It's a question of how many people, I suppose, Keith. How many people will it affect? What the government's doing, I think, is banking on having a kind of 5 or 6 months break so that they can get their act together, yes? So the budget has been brought forward because think of the pluses, Keith. At the moment, you've got a government that's nearly cracked coronavirus, have helped people generally, that's fair, and must be in a good position. But it seems to me that I just don't know who's going to pay for this, Keith. At the end of the day, the government's money is the taxpayers' money. So actually, we'll be paying ourselves for perhaps going into a foolhardy future. I'm just being contentious there because I'm trying to look at all sides, but it's a very, very brave budget. And again, I want to see the figures, Keith. It's all very well giving a speech for an hour and a half, but there was no breakdown. It gave certain figures like the overall borrowings, etc., Paul, Keith. But if you've got to bring it all together, Keith, and what will it cost? So by September, or let's say by early next year, where he's expecting the economy to go into a more recovery, what if there's a slump somewhere? What hasn't been taken into account is that there could be a worldwide slump, there could be a corporate problems, so you don't get the tax. The corporation tax has probably upset the likes of Amazon, etc., and other big companies, and that's it. But I just think it's rather like giving a kid a sweet, and you know how much we like sweets at the time, but the sweet dissolves, and I don't see it, until I see the figures, and I think I've been reading other commentators make the same point. Until we've seen the figures and the breakdown, we can't really judge. It's only a day after the budget. The analysis will go on, but initially, I think everyone reacted like you and I, Keith. We're both long-term cynics and have been around a bit. It was a big gasp and wow, but we've woken up today with potentially a headache. Because as it transpires, it might be that there's the things that haven't been mentioned. The budget is supposed to be all-encompassing, but in an hour and a half, how can you tell the people exactly what they are? I think most people want to see, okay, how's it going to be paid for? Is the big question.
Yeah. Well, the trades unions haven't been particularly high profile during this period. Where do they stand? I mean, are they standing back and saying, "Okay, we'll give a chance"? Or because I mean, if the trades unions decide to kick up, and we had a summer of discontent, as it were, then that again would be that would be throwing a wrench into the works, wouldn't it?
Yeah, good point, Keith. I don't think many people have thought about that. Actually, the trade unions won't do that for the following simple reason. They'll be the spoilsports. Because at the moment, the government's riding a crest of everyone's a lot happier. Lockdown's going to be finished soon. Coronavirus has been more or less conquered, etc. All good. So if the trade unions put their hands up and say, well, this is awful, the public will just shout them down saying, well, look, come on, we're all working together in this and you're standing out complaining. Remember that the idea of whether it's a Tory government or a Labour government, it's the way forward. They're trying to bring us into this new era. Well, if the unions are against that, of course, they will be unpopular with the public. And I think there'd be an outcry. So they'll go along with it until there's a failure. But at the moment, I think he's been criticised, Keith, but I've seen much worse criticism of budget in the past than he's had. But let's see. I'm still cynical about it, you know.
I think that one of the interesting things that we didn't pick up yesterday, and I don't think many people did, is that the minimum wage is to be increased to £8.91 an hour from April. I'm not quite sure what it is now. I don't think the increase is great, is it?
No, it's not, but it's a gesture, isn't it, Keith? Because what the government's done, I think, is to look at every aspect of people's earnings and corporations' earnings, and they're giving a little bit some places and a lot the other. That's more or less a gesture in the great scheme of things. But if you look at all the grants, the sponsorships, etc., the average individual probably hasn't done too badly. The working man on furlough, I mean, the furlough scheme has been pretty good. My son's on this, as you know, it's a load of goodies we've had. I can't pick out at the moment where the bad part is, because I don't think he's discussed much of the bad part. Whereas if you look at previous chancellors. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, one of the newspapers, I think it's the Telegraph, which is not particularly sympathetic to this government. It's very strange that right-wing paper isn't sympathetic to this government, but it has suggested that if you actually add up the length of time that furlough is going to last, is that it's going to be quite extensive, and that therefore the cost is going to be quite big. And if that's the case, is that it could easily be because nobody has bothered to do the figures except for the Telegraph. That easily could be one of the downsides, is that the revenue stream is going to be very thin indeed.
Yes. Think of the public as a car, Keith. I think what they've tried to do is keep the car ticking over in lockdown. Then they've got this idea that there's going to be a new racetrack, etc., which we're going to build, i.e. the new economy, the new era, and everyone's going to be dragged into that, and it's a good way. So I think it's just kept people. What have the main complaints of people in lockdown been? It's really deprived of liberty, yes, but then any government would have probably had a lockdown. This budget is kind of relieves a few tensions, Keith, and kind of paves a way. But it's like you and me saying that we're going to walk to France tomorrow. We've never done that before, and yet it's something that we can't achieve. So I'm really trying to think what he's doing. Is he throwing money against the wall and appeasing everybody, which actually will lead to a build-up of unhappiness? So yeah, that's the problem I've got. It just is. I think it is too good to be true, and they've got to publish the figures later, haven't they? We haven't seen all the figures, so add it all together.
Well, the civil servants have to go out with them, don't they, with the fine-tooth comb?
That's right. Yeah, very good point you made. That's the thing. At the moment, all we've seen is the upfront stage. The people at the back who are working on the figures, they're key. That'll be the key thing, Keith. So let's not get carried away. We've got to wait till Treasury figures are given, and then we'll see the real scenario.
Right.
I've talked to you.
Now let's just we'll take a break, Paul, and then we'll come back, because there are 2 or 3 local stories that would be budget related floating around. I'd like to ask you about one, including pubs, which means that you and I will be very interested in it.
Yep, I can't wait.
When you've missed the train, don't despair. Have a nice cup of coffee. And perhaps a mince pie. At the Runaway on Lewes Station. After that, why worry about the next train? The Runaway on Lewes Station. Relaxation beyond compare.
Right, welcome back, Paul Fowle and Keith Hayes. Paul giving you some intelligent comment and me sniping from the sidelines. But then that's my role, sniping from the sidelines. Paul, a couple of things that are floating around here is that Premier Inns, we have a Premier Inns in Lewes, and they're fairly well established around the country, is that they're going to expand. And this comes out of a local source, so I assume that they're looking for places to expand in the southeast. Now, there are 2 things there. First of all, you mentioned yesterday about tourism and so on and so forth, and there was not a great deal mentioned in the budget. But do you think that the people who own Premier Inns know something we don't, and that they can see a much brighter future for the? I mean, let's put it bluntly, they're very comfortable, but they're the cheaper side of a hotel. I mean, they're more or less a fancy motel. And do you think that that expansion will be reflected in the entire sector?
This is a good point, Keith. I've stayed there at Lewis, and I've stayed in many Premier hotels. The one in Brighton as well. Okay, what they've done, if you use, I use analogies. It's like when Warren Buffett said, when the herd are leaving, placing money on a market, I go into it. What Premier Inn are saying is that we're going to be bold. All the other hotels might be curtailing their activities, making sure they don't spend too much. So what they're going to say is there will be an expansion. We're going to be the first hotel in there. And if you like, the Premier Inn has got a certain category of its own, because if you look at all of them, they deliver. Their breakfasts are very good. Their rooms are very smart. The beds are to die for. I've stayed at, when I went to a wedding in Essex, Leigh-on-Sea, I stayed, it's the best bed I've slept on. So Keith, what they give the person is a very good deal at a time when the economy is not in great shape. So I think it'll be quite a clever move. I'm surprised only one has done that, because they're banking for, they've got a 4 or 5 year plan, I expect. Whereas the other hotels that just have the 1 year plan, these are the people that will fail. They've seen something that they're going to bank that the market which will pick up. And let's face it, tourism will pick up, Keith. Let's get that right. There's going to be a flood of tourism. There'll be a flood, and in 5 years' time, we'll probably be back to where we are, or where we were, perhaps in better shape. So I don't know. I haven't read anything about Premier Inn, but I'm not surprised they've done that.
Now, the second one that will gladden your heart is that apparently the reaction to the suggestion that communities should take over pubs and theatres and so on and so forth as community projects is apparently gaining some legs in our part of the world. I hate it every time a pub closes. The thing is, it's not so much that I'm a heavy drinker and bounce from pub to pub, go on pub crawls and so on, not anymore anyway. But I do think that pubs are full of history and full of local history. And sometimes you see a little plaque saying, Maisie Bell sat here for 80 years and kept everybody amused, and God bless her, she should be remembered. That's sort of very local history. So I think that I don't like to see pubs close at all. And of course, the highwaymen used to use them and ply their evil trade from them and make themselves wealthy, believe it or not. But most highwaymen turned out to be the younger sons of noble families who didn't get any of the family heritage, but knew how to shoot a gun. but anyway, what I really wanted to ask you is sometimes it's great to see the public and community groups and so on getting hold of things to keep them going. But quite often what happens is that it then descends into the farce of most public bodies. When I say public, I mean citizens' bodies, is that they all fall out. So do you welcome this move, or are you skeptic like me?
I'm going to make a bold statement that I think everyone would like. When I was at uni, I had to do the importance of a pub. I'll tell you, from the 18th century, 17th century onwards, the only thing that has brought together a lord, a worker, all of society is in a pub, Keith. Just to show you that I was lived in Rotherhithe, where it's a bit of a dangerous area, and in my pub was an ex-murderer, a vet, a local police chief, myself, a butcher, and a candlestick maker, all of them in there. If anyone lets the pubs go, the glue of social cohesion will go, Keith. Think about it. Where do we actually work, where do we actually meet people, have our greatest pleasure? In a pub. And if the government lets pubs fail, then I think you'd have actually not riots in the street, but very unhappy people. So the pub is glue. So starting from that premise that the pub is the glue of society, I'm all for it. And you're right. All the community. Sorry, you're right. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you with my little cough.
No. Well, to have a tot of whiskey, Keith.
Well, no, it's off to the left.
I can see. So, Keith, that's what the government's got to encourage that, but I think it's up to it's half and half. It's half the government should start this off, and half that the community should do. But you're right, Keith. As you know, I've got a vested interest. My son is a landlord, and it's a damn difficult job. But during lockdown, his pub and pubs were actually people were kept happy. If all the conversations we've had, I'm sure with your people, with my friends and family, I can't wait to see you in the pub, Paul, where there's no social distancing, because that's who we are, Keith. An American observer many years ago said that the greatest thing that Britain's given is the pub culture. And let's not forget that. There is nowhere in the world that has the pub culture, let's face it. And I'm saying this with having done a lot of research on pubs, and you have, Keith, because we like drinking there. So does that make sense? When I said that to my tutor at uni, who's written a book on the 17th, 18th century, it is true. You think, where else do you go to meet varied people of all hues, all colours, all that's, in other words, the pub unites people. You could be black, white, green, Martian, and you're welcome. And that's my point. I think the government should recognise the pub is very important. Yep. Would you agree?
I would. My main worry is, of course, is that they've fabricated their own little bars within the bubble, and a lot of them. If there's anybody that doesn't go into a pub, it's a member of parliament. Perhaps because they don't like being called out over the bar, which in pubs sometimes that would happen. And it's sad, really, because, as you say, the social fabric of a society, of a community, big or small, lies in the pubs. And if you really wanted to take a big city like London, you can break it down almost to the pubs that people go to. You and I can have a chat to our old pals in the city or at Reuters or whatever, and we can say, we can name the pubs that we went to and that we spent time in. And we can say, are they still there? And that sort of thing. So, yes, what you say, and God bless you, I think you should go back to university and get a PhD in that so that you can advise us further. Now, the one downside, Paul, that is coming out of some local research is that the home teaching, while some people have taken a lot of trouble to make sure that they look after their children at home and try to teach them, but it has not worked the way that it should have. And the urgency to get children back to school so that they start to be taught proper, as it were, is of paramount importance. I personally, I mean, my grandchildren have now left unit, let alone my daughter having left school. So it's not something that hits me between the eyes, but it does seem to me to make some sense, that statement. What's your view?
Home teaching doesn't do it, Keith, really, because I think teaching's moved on. I know I've got a teacher friend who's got children, and she finds it even hard to marshal her children at home. I think we've actually had enough of home at the moment, Keith. I think it's good the kids are getting back on the 8th, aren't they? I think, is that right, the 8th of March?
I think it's
yes. That's the best thing, because I think the children have suffered a lot. My
Monday,
son was, when
Monday
I say
they go back. Yeah.
Yes, it's Monday, yeah. And I think they'll be released because I feel sorry for a 4 to 8 year old or a 10-year-old. You're stuck at home. Yes, there's only so many times you can play the videos, etc. You can look at it. It must have been terrible for children. When I went to my son's pub and met, fun enough, he's right next to a school. He was next to a school. I met a lot of the school teachers, and they were saying how difficult it was, and their children were suffering. So I think, as soon as we get them back to school, because let's face it, Keith, you can't develop as a child without going to school. And so that's got to be key. I'm glad the government's done it at last. Could they have done it earlier? I don't know, but it's common sense. So teaching at home, I've heard of geniuses who've been taught at home, but it just doesn't make sense. So the kids will welcome it. I'm sure they can also run around in the playground and run around in the fields, and do what boys and girls do. So
I
I'm
just
delighted.
saw a little icon come up on the screen, and our good friend John Kessels has popped in this morning. And I think we should say thank you to John yesterday, because he acted as sort of a third-party analyst and made some very telling points. He's obviously got a very, very keen mind, and we were able to latch onto those points and perhaps make our commentary even better. And anyway, he's lurking this morning, so be careful what you say. But welcome, John, and it's always good to see you here on Mirador. It is 8:05. Let us just take a moment or two pause and look at the other news. And probably, I mean, I'm not quite sure. Well, there are two things that I sort of have a tendency to say, get on with it. One is the Meghan and Harry issue with the Oprah interview, and they're dribbling it out. I think it's the 5th. When's the 5th? Tomorrow. Is it tomorrow night that the program comes out? I'm not quite sure, but anyway, within the next couple of days or so, and they've been dribbling stuff out, and now Meghan has accused the royals of perpetuating falsehoods. In other words, she's calling them liars. I mean, to put it bluntly. So that's going to be a nice little row that's is brewing up. The other is there's more evidence to be given by Nicola Sturgeon north of the border, and I mean, I know that this is a very serious issue, whether Scotland stays part of the United Kingdom or not. There are huge passions, and those passions should really, in many ways, be shared more amongst the Scots than us. Although obviously we would have it would have an effect if they decided to leg it. But I can't help but smile that she and Alex Salmond, neither of whom come across as particularly nice people, and particularly over sexual harassment charges, are pounding the hell out of one another. It's making headlines right across Scotland, and views are changing all the time. Alex Salmond was the villain, and now Nicola is the villain. She was lying, and she set out on a deliberate sabotage program. It really is. I'm sorry, but to quote Little John, you couldn't make it up. So those are two of the big things this morning. The other one is sorry. Sorry, Paul. No, all right. But the other one is that the COVID infections are declining, but there is a decline in the decline. And they are still, the latest that I saw is that the investigators into the Brazilian variant have limited it now to about 300 households. And are getting closer to finding the source. But if in fact there are 300 people that they're investigating and 300 people have been infected, is with a decline and with a new variant about to shoot out. It always frightens me that all the things that we're looking forward to, and we really are looking forward to, is Boris will be forced to renege on and say, I'm terribly sorry, I can't let you loose. I can't let you through the gates this week because of all these things. So I think we should watch those very carefully. I agree. We tend to sort of shrug our shoulders and say, "Oh well, it's a variant." Look at what's happening. We're really bringing the infection down, 80% down, and we've got the vaccines, and we're ahead of the world, and so on and so forth. But it doesn't take much to let this little terror out of the bag. And I really, those people who are being very cavalier about it, and you can see them on the streets of Lewis. So I'm sure you can see them on the streets of most towns and communities throughout the United Kingdom. Is just be a little bit cautious, because I think that bit by bit, if you're somebody who the finger is pointed at to say you didn't pay attention to some of these rules and regulations, is that you're going to find that your community is not going to like you very much, let alone the law. And you're the law. Represented the law for many years, Paul. I mean, the law actually they can nab somebody here and there, but generally speaking, it's got to be a feeling amongst the community, hasn't it, to make this work?
It's the law's become a toothless tiger. What's difficult for the public is to see what's a regulation, what's the law, Keith. As I say, if I compare Canada and Australia to Britain, they closed the border on day one. We didn't. They have a clear-cut mandate, and the population tend to react to that. I don't think our people, at the end of the day, Keith, it's a mixture of government enforcement and people being sensible. At the end of the day, the government, it's not their fault. They can't control 80 million people at any one time, but they can clearly spell out regulations. As I say, as you know, I think the viewers know, I've lived in Australia for 9 years, and they were quite clear there. They warned a guy 4 or 5 times for not wearing a mask and for breaching other things, 6 months in jail and a $10,000 fine. And that's what we should do. As an ex-policeman, I'm not taking a right-wing view here or anything like that. It's just common sense. If you walk around and you're not sure about whether you can give somebody coronavirus or not, you shouldn't be walking around, Keith. And if the government say people have a go at governments, but they're right to keep on warning us. But people always flout it, Keith. I'm sure. Look at during the war when you thought everyone's united. During the war, when the bombs were going off, criminals were at their most active. Criminality during the war and the Blitz was 3 times the normal level, Keith. So you've got a nasty part of society that will always take advantage of huge difficulties, and that's it. So at the end of the day, it's a balance between sensible government regulation and law, sensible interpretation, clear cut to the people that it once, twice, and you're out. And that's what Canada and Australia have done, I understand. And that's what we don't do. I think we've got a sense of great democracy that we really mustn't be too tough with people. Hey, somebody can kill another person. So I reckon they should crack down. And this isn't me as an ex-policeman. It's just common sense.
Yeah, I remember in the movie Dunkirk, and they're showing the little boats being prepared, and I mean this part of the world, of course, was heavily involved in the little boats: New Haven, Seaford, Hastings, Brighton, and along the coast. But I think it was. Richard Attenborough played the part of a man with a very expensive yacht who had managed to avoid going to joining the army and had made a fortune from being at home. And of course, they turn him into a hero. And it's always one of those nice things in a story is the bad guy ends up being the hero, and we don't mind if he loses his life because he's going to be remembered forever. But the fact of the matter is that this is a bit like the last war. So all those people who are looking at us and say, those two, all about the last war. But there are many parallels, and you're quite right. There are people who are profiteering from this situation. And I hope that the full force of the law does come down on them, because it is not fair, it is not just. But in the main, I am many things, but I don't think that I'm totally immoral. And I think that is immoral to do that sort of thing, is feasting and getting yourself rich on the backs of your fellow citizens who are suffering badly. Anyway. I just got a call, a text message from one of our mutual friends, and I think it might be nice if we actually just reminded people that he will be back with us in the not too distant future. Here he is.
Good morning, peeps. We're back in Hailsham after 3 weeks. I've had a few issues going on with health and various other stuff, but back to full strength again now. Gardens are looking good. As you can see, the rain is here to help things grow. So our little perennial garden in Hailsham that we've been working on for the last few months is now really coming together. We've got enormous hollyhocks growing. The alliums are all out, cicerantiums. It's an absolute blast of life now, and we're still not in the main growing season. So another few weeks it will really come to life. So as you can remember, we planted courgettes and peas and sugar snaps in the outside bed. So the courgettes are now flowering, and the sugar snaps and the peas are doing remarkably well.
And now that's Alex Hall and his dog, which we don't see there, but his dog Joey. Joey really is the host of the program.
Joey.
He makes Alex work.
He's-
But also, I see that the little icon says that somebody else has joined us watching, and it's Jane Watkins. And Jane is one of my very favourite people. She's very, very funny. She's got great humour, and she is a natural broadcaster. And I just so happens that I have just a little clip of her here. So, Jane, watch out. Here you come.
Hi, I'm Jane at Mirador Television, and I love to recycle, upcycle, renovate, decorate, paint, and if I can find any old junk, I'm happy to turn it into something else. So in the next few months, I'm going to give you some ideas and show you what I'm up to at home, from turning tins into bins, making garden cushions, and my recent find was a Lloyd Loom ottoman, which has a wonky leg, but I'm going to try and renovate the leg and find some lovely fabrics. So lots going on. This week, I'm just going to show you a couple of old cot bumpers that I found hanging around the house from some time ago, and I thought, well, I don't want to waste the foam. I'll turn them into some seat cushions for the garden bench.
Jane, we think that Mirador has managed to fight its way through the problems that this latest lockdown brought down upon our shoulders. It was almost like a fury from God that hit us. But hopefully we're getting it through, and I hope that you will come back because, as I say, she's a natural broadcaster, but she's a very funny lady. She's got a great sense of humour, and that shows through her face. Yeah. And as she says, her family like to laugh a lot, and that she always sees the glass half full. Well, as you know, I mean, I can laugh at the most serious situation. And so laughing and seeing the glass half full are two things that I love in people, and that's Jane. So if you stayed watching Jane while we showed that little clip, I just hope that you will be back very shortly. Because you're a great asset to the broadcast industry. And one of the things about Mirador that I like to think we do is we bring in people from who are unknown. We've had some really good, what should I say, successes here. And I mentioned them the other day because at the moment they're wasting away. And I haven't been able to use my masculine charms to try and get them out of deadlock or dreadlock or whatever the hell it is lock. There's Annie Verrill, who did the morning thing with me, is a very, very talented young lady. And she's got children, and she had to watch after them when the lockdown came. But she's a very talented lady. There is Lalada Daniels, or Lalada Richardson, as she's known. People sometimes use their married name and sometimes their maiden name in this industry, so you have to be careful who you're identifying. But Lalada is another natural. The camera just loves her. Now we've got Jane, and then there was a third young lady who also went off and had children. And one hopes that as they get used to the children get a school age, that we can persuade them to come back. And that is Sophie Harris, a really, really talented young lady, confident in front of the camera. The camera liked her. And all those came out of Lewis. Now, I've kicked around the world, and I know how difficult it is to find really natural talent. Really natural talent. There are some people who work at it and become very good, don't misunderstand me, but there is natural talent. And for three to come out of Lewis and one to come out of Hastings is really, it just shows what talent is lurking, if only we can find it. And I would like to think that one of the things that we do at Mirador is that we find this talent. Well, we found you, for God's sake. You'd done no television up until 3, 4, 5 months ago. And now here you are. For God's sake, I can't get a word in edgewise.
John, Keith, you've been speaking most of the time. No, yeah, that's good. That's good. By the way, I was policeman in Hastings, but I was born in Hove, actually. So let's get that right. I'm Hove actually person. So
Yes,
I correct you there.
you've lived in Lewis,
I lived in
but also,
and Hastings. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be looking for talent right throughout the United Kingdom, or for that matter, right throughout the world. I have no. I mean, one of my great successes in a training, and she's become a huge success for Russia Today television, is Sophie Chevron. Sophie was the granddaughter of Edward, who was one of the great reformers with Gorbachev.
Yeah.
And Sophie is not only is she beautiful, but she is also very talented. The big problem is there is always this little hump to come over. And one day I was walking past the studio, and she came out in floods of tears. And I'll never be able to do this. I'll never be able to do this. And I put my arm around her and patted her shoulder and said, "So you get back in there. It's like riding a bicycle. When you fall off, you get back on, and away you go." And she did. And now throughout the world, I mean, magazines like Hello do stories on her and that sort of thing. I mean, she's a great ambassador for Russia Today, I may say, but a very talented lady. So there are lots of talent. There's lots of talent under the surface to be scratched. And the trouble with the big boys, the BBC and so on, is they pay somebody an astonishing amount of money, and then they use them on all sorts of other programs just to justify their costs. And the people on the outside, such as the people that I've just mentioned, or for that matter, is somebody like Sophie, is they don't get a chance. They don't get a look at. And okay, we don't get the audience that the BBC does or ITV does, but we are able to expose talent, and sometimes it's seen and it'll be picked up. But even if it's not, at least we give people an opportunity to express their talent and to use it to the betterment of us all. Dun, 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 dun. That was a great speech, wasn't it? Let's go back to the budget now. Right.
And we have more fun.
Let's go back to your particular excellence as an economist. Is the economy is forecast to return to pre-COVID levels by the middle of 2022, with a growth of 7.3% next year. Now, I would say that the Chancellor was pinning his hopes to that sort of forecast, that if we've got a robust economy, that we will be able to start to pay back the money that we've borrowed or taken out of the coffers to get over this bad period. But what's your view, Paul? Is that optimistic, or could it be realised?
Well, as I say, the fact he's given timelines is unusual, and I don't see how you can give an exact timeline when we've gone through something we've never dealt with before, Keith, because the world will be a different place. I admire his forecast. I suppose what they've banked on is that they've actually come through everything with not flying colours. They've cheesed the public off a lot, but they have got results on the vaccine. He's now done his budget. They're probably banking that, well, everyone's going to pull together. Employment will go up after a term of unemployment, and we'll be back to normal in 2 years' time. I think personally it's optimistic, but hey, I read this morning he said in this morning's Telegraph that the plan it's gone to plan that we made 12 months ago. So if they're happy that they've got the first 12-month plan, which leads us to the budget, then yes, it's possible. But he's banking on a lot of ifs and ands and pots and pans, Keith. It'll be an incredible. The economy is not damaged beyond repair. We all know that. But Guy, it's like a motor car that's running on, limited petrol at the moment. So yeah, if he's saying they can do it, then then I admire him for saying that. I think, like anyone, a pundit or an economist or whatever, you kind of go for, well, let's be realistic, 2-3 years, etc. But yes, he's an unusual chancellor because he has been quite explicit and quite decisive, if you like. So there's that to admire. But if he's got it wrong, oh dear.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm smiling, Paul, because borrowing in 2021-22 is going to total 234 billion. I don't want all that 234 billion. I just like a tenner so that I can get my fiver out. Paul, it is. We've had another good morning of looking at the the budget and other little things that are floating around. I do need to say thank you to our sponsors and supporters. I'm going to do that. It's 8:25. Don't go away because we do need to say goodbye to everybody. But let's just pause for a moment and let the sponsors, as it were, have their say.
Okay, right.
When you've missed the train, don't despair. Have a nice cup of coffee. And perhaps a mince pie. At the Runaway on Lewes Station. After that, why worry about the next train? The Runaway on Lewes Station. Relaxation beyond compare.
Well, it's now 28 minutes past 8. Almost time to say goodbye. Paul, would you like a final word? Because I don't think that we'll probably talk about the budget from here on in. Any comment?
I'll give a rallying cry. If you look at the British history, we've got great sense of humour. We're hardworking people. We like to moan. We have fun. That's being British, and I think we'll get through this. This is a civilian wartime budget, and we've had war budgets in the past. We'll get through it, Keith. And whether it's right or wrong what he said, we're adaptable people. That's why Britain is still the city is still the biggest financial market in the country. We should be proud of what we've got, Keith, and we shouldn't get too downhearted. Smile, for God's sake, and I look at your scarf and I smile. Let's have fun.
I get an email a day from Harrison Ford asking for his hat back.
Yes, what about Doctor Who?
Okay, Paul, we are developing your own program, so we can take a much more serious look at business as it's affected in both Sussex and around the world, for that matter, and as it relates to the local community. And we look forward to when that starts. It'll probably be, sooner rather than later. It'd probably be within 10 days as we start to assemble it, and other good things I think that we're going to have. It's 8:30, so let's just remind people who we are. So from beautiful Lewis, and on behalf of, there he is, he's got his smiling face back there. On behalf of Paul Fowle and myself, Keith Hayes, we will see you tomorrow, and we will see you next week, and we'll see you the week after, because despite the best efforts of some people to get rid of us, we ain't going away. So the weather, which everybody is always interested in, because I just took a look outside, it is dry. I can't see that it's raining. The tree that I look at the wind is calm. So yes, the breeze is modest. It's going to rise to 7 degrees today, which ain't terribly warm, but it's going to go down to 2 tonight, and it's going to get lower as we approach the weekend. So do stay warm. Don't be fooled. And just to show what a modern operation we are, let's remind you how we get the weather.
Hi, welcome to Mirador Television. This is local TV, but probably not local TV as you know it. We don't have much cash, so for one thing, we have to do much of our stuff outside. We don't even have a studio. So we don't even have a weather presenter. But we will try to bring you the weather. So when you see me with an umbrella, it's raining. So when I have my walking stick, it's fine. If my hat blows off, it's windy. And if I'm wearing a bikini, it's hot. Not that you're going to see me in a bikini very often. The body's gone, you see. Not a pretty sight. But when it comes to mixed weather, well, we really have a problem.
Oh, yeah.
It's silly of us to serve up the same old rubbish that you can see on regular television, so we're serving up rubbish of our own. But I hope that it's nutty enough to bring you back to watch us again. Stick with us, Nutty TV.
So it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from him. He's buggered off already. See you tomorrow. Take care. Toodle pip.